The ancient star chart showed 17 empty spaces where galaxies used to exist. Now those same charts displayed a single name repeated across the cosmic void: Dravani Empire. For over 1,000 years, they had swept through the universe, like a plague of living metal and flesh, consuming everything in their path. Admiral Korath felt the familiar pulse of his flagship beneath his feet. The massive bioship breathed around him, its organic walls shifting and adapting to his presence. Unlike the cold metal vessels of lesser species, Dravani ships were alive. They could think, heal, and most importantly, they could change. Every weapon fired at them made them stronger. Every tactic used against them became useless within hours. The bridge curved around him like the inside of a great beast's skull. Sensor data flowed directly into his enhanced nervous system, letting him see and feel everything his ship experienced. Ahead lay their next target, a spiral galaxy the locals called the Milky Way. Korath's tactical computers counted over 400 billion stars. Most would have planets. Many would have life. All would soon belong to the Empire. His second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Veth, approached with the familiar clicking sound of biomechanical limbs against the ship's living floor. Her form was more machine than flesh now, having undergone the standard military upgrades. Extra arms allowed her to interface with multiple ship systems simultaneously. Her original eyes had been replaced with sensors that could see across dozens of spectrums. The scouting fleets report initial contact with local species, Veth announced. Her voice came through both organic vocal cords and electronic transmitters. Standard resistance levels. Energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, nuclear devices. Nothing we haven't adapted to countless times before. Korath allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The pattern was always the same. First came fear as the local species detected their approach, then desperate messages between worlds as they tried to organize some kind of defense. Finally, the futile battles where primitive weapons bounced harmlessly off Dravani bioarmor, while their ships learned and adapted to every attack. The tactical display showed dozens of civilizations scattered throughout this galaxy. The Alterran collective controlled nearly 1,000 systems through peaceful trade. Their ships were built for commerce, not war. They would surrender quickly, as merchants always did. The Vorthak Confederation looked more promising. Their military held 300 systems, and their energy weapons showed some creativity. They might provide a few hours of interesting combat before their inevitable defeat. But one species caught Korath's attention. The humans had spread across hundreds of systems in just a few centuries, which was impressive for such a young race. Their technology seemed crude by galactic standards, but they had achieved faster-than-light travel and established colonies throughout their region of space. Most interesting of all, their expansion patterns made no logical sense. Unlike other species that expanded in orderly spheres or followed trade routes, human colonies appeared randomly scattered. Some systems had massive populations while neighboring systems remained empty. Their ships used dozens of different designs instead of standardizing on the most efficient models. Even their governments were chaotic, with hundreds of different political systems across their territory. Curious, Korath mused as he studied the human data. They appear to have no central coordination, yet they continue expanding. How do they maintain supply lines with such disorder? Veth's mechanical eyes focused on the tactical display. Perhaps they are not as primitive as they appear. Several of their colonies show defensive preparations. They seem to be evacuating non-essential personnel from border systems. Smart, but futile, Korath replied. Evacuation only delays the inevitable. Their weapons will prove as useless as all the others. The first engagement reports were already coming in from the outer rim. A Dravani scout fleet had encountered an Alterran merchant convoy. The aliens had immediately surrendered and requested terms for peaceful integration into the Empire. Standard procedure. Within days, Alterran shipyards would be producing bioships for the Dravani fleet. The Vorthak were proving more entertaining. Their plasma cannons had actually damaged several scout ships before the bioarmor adapted. Now those same weapons couldn't even scratch the hull plating. The Vorthak military was reorganizing, trying different energy frequencies and weapon combinations. It wouldn't matter. Within a week, their entire arsenal would be useless against Dravani defenses. A communication pulse arrived from the Advance fleet. Sub-Admiral Kren's bioship had encountered human vessels near a system they called Wolf 359. The engagement had lasted barely 20 minutes. Human railguns and missile systems had performed exactly as expected, causing minor damage before the bioships adapted. The human vessels had retreated rather than fighting to the death, which was unusual but not unprecedented. Cowardice disguised as tactics, Veth observed. They sacrificed their outer colonies hoping to buy time for their core worlds. Koreth wasn't entirely convinced. Something about the human retreat felt different from the desperate flight of a beaten enemy. Their ships had withdrawn in good order, and their retreat routes showed careful planning. They were giving up territory, but they weren't panicking. The bioship's living computers processed data from 100 different sources. Gravitational sensors detected massive fleet movements throughout human space. Instead of concentrating their forces for a final battle, the humans seemed to be scattering their ships across dozens of systems. Their military communications used encryption that changed constantly, making it impossible to predict their next moves. Over the following days, more reports arrived. Human colonies continued evacuating rather than surrendering. Their military kept retreating, avoiding major battles while launching hit-and-run attacks that accomplished nothing significant. The Dravani bioships easily adapted to every weapon the humans used, just as they had adapted to the weapons of 1,000 other species. Yet something nagged at Koreth's enhanced consciousness. Every other species had shown clear patterns in their behavior. The Alterans sought profit, the Vorthak valued military honor, the crystalline entities of the Andromeda galaxy had operated on pure logic. But the humans seemed to follow no consistent pattern at all. Their retreat routes zigzagged through space for no apparent reason. Their weapons changed constantly, instead of focusing on their most effective designs. Even their surrender offers came at random intervals from random colonies, with no apparent coordination between systems. Perhaps chaos is simply their nature, Veth suggested when Koreth voiced his concerns. Some species never develop proper organization. It makes them weak. Koreth hoped she was right. But as his fleet advanced deeper into human territory, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. The humans weren't acting like a defeated enemy. They were acting like they had a plan. The distress signal reached the human exploration vessel Pioneer 3 days after the Vorthak battle station died. Reed watched the aftermath through his ship's telescopic arrays, seeing nothing but expanding debris where a military fortress had stood for 2 centuries. Whatever had attacked the station was already gone, leaving only wreckage and silence. His science officer, Davis, ran the sensor data through the ship's computers for the 5th time. The readings made no sense. The attacking vessels had absorbed every weapon fired at them, growing stronger with each hit. Energy signatures showed the enemy ships were somehow alive, adapting and changing in real time during combat. "Sir, I'm detecting similar attacks across 3 sectors," Davis reported. "The Alteran trade hub at Kepler Station went dark 6 hours ago. No distress signal, no battle damage. They just stopped transmitting." Reed felt his stomach clench. The Alterans were peaceful traders who had never fought a war in their recorded history. If they had gone silent, they had probably surrendered without firing a shot. But the Vorthak were different. They were warriors who would fight to the last soldier. Yet their most powerful military installation had been destroyed in less than an hour. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," Reed ordered. "Full data package on these attacks. Tell them we have unknown hostiles in the Outer Rim with adaptive technology beyond anything in our databases. Recommend immediate military alert." The quantum relay would carry the message across hundreds of light years in a matter of weeks. Reed hoped it would be fast enough. His ship was designed for exploration, not combat. If these mysterious attackers decided to target human colonies, the Pioneer couldn't do much to stop them. More reports came in over the following days. An entire Vorthak fleet had engaged the invaders near the Rigel system. The battle lasted 8 hours, longer than any previous encounter. The Vorthak had tried everything in their arsenal: plasma cannons, particle beams, antimatter torpedoes. even experimental gravity weapons. For the first few minutes of each attack, their weapons had worked perfectly. Then the enemy ships had changed, adapted, and become immune. Commander Hayes received the evacuation order while his patrol ship Ranger was investigating strange energy readings near New Phoenix Colony. The civilian transports were already loading families and essential equipment when Hayes arrived in orbit. Colony Administrator Park met him via video link, her face tight with controlled panic. "We got the warning from Earth Command 2 hours ago," Park explained. "Unknown hostiles advancing through Vorthak space. Adaptive defenses. Colony evacuation authorized." Hayes had read the preliminary reports. Entire civilizations were falling to these invaders within days of first contact. Their ships were described as biomechanical hybrids that could adapt to any weapon used against them. No species had found an effective defense. "How long until the transports are loaded?" Hayes asked. 12 hours for essential personnel and equipment. Another day for everyone else." "You have 6 hours, Hayes told her. "I'm detecting energy signatures at the edge of the system. They're not human." The evacuation became a desperate race against time. Civilian ships launched only half loaded while Hayes positioned his patrol vessel between the colony and the approaching unknowns. His ship carried standard human military equipment, railguns, nuclear missiles, and basic energy shields. According to the reports, none of it would work against these adaptive invaders. The enemy appeared on his sensors as 3 massive objects moving at a significant fraction of light speed. As they came closer, Hayes could see they were like nothing in human military databases. The ships seemed to be alive, their hulls shifting and changing as they moved through space. Organic curves blended seamlessly with technological components that served no identifiable purpose. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Hayes of the Human Space Navy," he broadcast on standard frequencies. "You are approaching a civilian evacuation in progress. Please state your intentions." The response came, in perfect human English, though the voice sounded artificial. "Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Resistance will result in destruction. Your species will be integrated into the Dravani Empire." Hayes had expected this moment since joining the military. Every officer trained for the possibility of encountering hostile aliens, but training couldn't prepare him for the reality of facing an enemy that had already conquered multiple civilizations. "Negative, alien vessel. We are conducting a humanitarian evacuation. Withdraw, or we will be forced to engage." The lead enemy ship moved closer, its hull rippling with what looked like anticipation. Sensor readings showed the vessel was scanning his ship, analyzing its weapons and defenses. Hayes realized the enemy was studying him like a scientist studies a laboratory specimen. "Your weapons are primitive," the alien voice replied. "Chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles. We have adapted to such technology countless times. You cannot harm us." Hayes opened fire anyway. The Ranger's railguns sent depleted uranium slugs toward the enemy vessel at 10% of light speed. For a moment he thought the attack might work. The projectiles struck the alien hull and punched through the outer layer, sending debris spinning into space. Then the damage stopped. Hayes watched in horror as the holes in the enemy ship sealed themselves. The hull began changing, becoming denser and harder. When his second volley arrived, the railgun slugs bounced off harmlessly. "Adaptation complete," the alien announced. "Kinetic projectiles no longer effective. Surrender now or face destruction." Hayes switched to nuclear missiles. The first warhead detonated against the enemy hull in a brilliant flash of radiation and superheated plasma. Again, there was initial damage. The explosion carved a crater in the biomechanical surface and sent waves of energy through the alien ship's structure. But within minutes, the damage healed. The hull began developing new layers that absorbed and dispersed nuclear energy. Hayes' second missile exploded harmlessly against the adapted defenses. Behind him, the last civilian transport cleared the planet's atmosphere. New Phoenix Colony was empty except for automated systems and whatever equipment couldn't be evacuated in time. Hayes had done his job, but it felt like a hollow victory. The alien ship moved closer, clearly preparing to destroy his vessel. Hayes considered his options. He could retreat and live to fight another day, or he could stay and try to gather more intelligence about these adaptive invaders. Either choice felt wrong. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of destroying the Ranger, the alien ship simply disabled its weapons and engines with precise energy beams. Hayes found his vessel powerless but intact, drifting helplessly while the invaders moved on to their next target. "Why didn't they destroy us?" Davis asked. Hayes stared at the enemy ships as they disappeared into hyperspace. "I don't think they see us as a real threat. We're just insects to them, not worth the effort to squash." The thought was both humiliating and terrifying. If these Dravani considered human technology so primitive that they wouldn't even bother destroying disabled ships, how could humanity possibly resist their advance? Hayes watched his ship's emergency systems slowly restore power while he composed his report to Earth Command. Unknown adaptive hostiles confirmed. All conventional weapons ineffective after initial contact. Enemy technology far beyond human capabilities. Recommend immediate evacuation of all border colonies and full military mobilization. The emergency session in Earth's military command center had been running for 18 straight hours. Admiral Price stood before a holographic display showing the advancing Dravani fleet, red markers indicating conquered systems spreading like an infection across the galaxy. The aliens had destroyed or absorbed 12 different civilizations in less than 2 months. Humanity was next. Dr. Martinez rubbed her tired eyes and pulled up another data file. As the military's chief research scientist, she had been analyzing every scrap of information about the Dravani technology. The results were terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. Their bioships could adapt to any consistent threat within minutes, making conventional warfare impossible. "The pattern is always the same," Martinez explained to the assembled officers. "First contact involves standard weapons, energy beams, kinetic projectiles, nuclear devices. The alien ships take damage initially, then adapt and become immune. After that, resistance collapses quickly." General Brooks, head of Earth's ground forces, studied the tactical reports from fallen civilizations. The Vorthak had the best military in 3 sectors. Their plasma cannons could punch through a moon, but these things just absorbed the energy and kept coming. "That's exactly the problem," Martinez said, highlighting sections of combat data. "Every species we have records for uses standardized military equipment. The Vorthak had plasma weapons. The Crystalline Federation used gravity manipulation. The Alterans relied on defensive shields. One technology per civilization, perfected over centuries." Admiral Price saw where she was heading. "But that makes them predictable. The Dravani ships only need to adapt to one type of threat." "Exactly, and humans are different." Martinez called up records from recent human conflicts. "Look at our own military history. We've never standardized anything. Our ships carry dozens of different weapon systems. Even our own allies can't predict what we'll do in combat." The holographic display showed schematics of human warships. Unlike the elegant, streamlined designs of other species, human vessels looked like flying scrapyards. Different manufacturers, multiple weapon types, armor systems that varied from ship to ship. What other civilizations saw as inefficient, Martinez was beginning to see as humanity's greatest advantage. "The Dravani adapt to consistent threats," she continued. "But what if we don't give them anything consistent to adapt to? What if every ship carries completely different weapons? What if we change our tactics every few minutes?" Colonel Torres had been listening quietly from the back of the room. His battleship Defiance was scheduled for decommission next month, deemed too old and chaotic for modern military standards. The ship was a nightmare of conflicting technologies. Weapon systems from 6 different manufacturers, armor plating made from 8 different alloys, and a command structure that encouraged real-time improvisation. "You're talking about making chaos into a strategy," Torres said. "Exactly." Martinez pulled up more data. "Every successful species follows logical military doctrine, standardized equipment, predictable tactics, efficient command structures. But humans have never been logical about warfare. Admiral Price had spent 30 years trying to bring order to humanity's chaotic military. The idea of deliberately embracing disorder went against everything he had learned about command and control. But the advancing red markers on the tactical Display didn't leave room for conventional thinking. What are you proposing, Doctor? I call it the Chaos Protocol, Martinez said. Instead of fighting these things with our best equipment, we fight them with our worst. Every ship becomes unique. Every battle uses different tactics. We weaponize our own unpredictability. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Torres was the first to speak. You want to turn our entire military into a collection of one-off prototypes. Not prototypes, experiments. Every engagement becomes a test of something the Dravani have never seen before. Chemical weapons, kinetic bombs, electromagnetic pulse devices, even mining equipment converted to combat use. As soon as they start adapting to one threat, we switch to something completely different. General Brooks looked skeptical. That's not military strategy. That's barely controlled chaos. Controlled chaos is still chaos, Martinez replied. And chaos might be the only thing these adaptive ships can't handle. Admiral Price studied the tactical display again. The Dravani fleet was still weeks away from human space, but their advanced scouts had already probed several border systems. Traditional military planning suggested concentrating Earth's forces for a decisive battle. The Chaos Protocol suggested the opposite. Colonel Torres, Price said, your ship is scheduled for retirement anyway. Are you willing to test this theory? Torres had commanded the Defiance for 8 years. The ship was held together with spare parts and stubborn engineering. But it had survived battles that destroyed newer, more advanced vessels. Its weapon systems came from different eras of human technology. Its crew was a mixture of veterans and misfits who had learned to work together despite having no standard procedures. Yes, sir, but I'll need permission to modify our equipment and tactics. What kind of modifications? Everything. I want to strip out our standardized weapon systems and replace them with the most random collection of armaments we can find. Chemical explosives from the mining corps, electromagnetic weapons from the research division, even some of those experimental gravity bombs from the Black Projects division. The other officers looked horrified. Military doctrine emphasized standardization, for good reasons. Uniform equipment meant interchangeable parts, predictable performance, and coordinated tactics. Torres was proposing to throw away centuries of military science, but Martinez was nodding enthusiastically. That's exactly what we need. The Dravani won't be able to adapt if they don't know what to adapt to. Admiral Price made his decision. Colonel Torres, you have authorization to implement the Chaos Protocol on a limited basis. Take the Defiance and engage the next Dravani scout force. See if unpredictability can succeed where conventional tactics have failed. Over the following days, the Defiance underwent radical modifications. Standard plasma cannons were replaced with chemical warheads that released corrosive acid. Nuclear missiles were supplemented with electromagnetic pulse bombs. The ship's armor was patched with materials from a dozen different sources, creating a patchwork hull that looked like it had been assembled by children. The crew adapted to their new equipment with typical human flexibility. Weapons Officer Rodriguez learned to operate 6 different targeting systems. Engineer Brown jury-rigged connections between incompatible technologies. Even the ship's computer systems were modified to embrace randomness rather than efficiency. Torres established new tactical protocols that weren't really protocols at all. Instead of following predetermined battle plans, his officers were encouraged to improvise based on real-time conditions. Communications procedures were simplified to allow rapid changes in strategy. The entire ship became a platform for organized chaos. News of the Chaos Protocol spread through the human military. Some officers were intrigued by the unconventional approach. Others worried that humanity was abandoning proven military doctrine in favor of desperation tactics. But as reports continued to arrive of civilizations falling to the adaptive Dravani, even skeptics began to wonder if chaos might be preferable to certain defeat. The Defiance completed its modifications and left Earth orbit on a cold Tuesday morning. Torres had volunteered his ship and crew for what might be a suicide mission. They were heading for the outer rim to intercept Dravani scouts, armed with nothing but random weapons and the hope that unpredictability could triumph over adaptation. Behind them, other human ships began implementing their own versions of the Chaos Protocol, turning humanity's greatest weakness into their most desperate strategy. The Dravani vanguard moved through space like a school of mechanical fish, their bioships pulsing with organic rhythms, while sensors swept the surrounding void. Admiral Korath commanded the formation from his flagship, confident in the inevitable. Victory ahead. The edge of the human solar system lay before them, defended by nothing more than scattered patrol ships and obsolete defense platforms. His tactical computers identified the approaching threat as a single human vessel, roughly cruiser class but showing unusual energy signatures. The ship appeared to be heavily modified, its hull a patchwork of different materials and technologies. Korath found the sight amusing. Humans were apparently so desperate they were sending museum pieces to fight his advanced fleet. The human ship broadcast a standard challenge on military frequencies. Dravani vessels, this is Colonel Torres of the Human Space Navy Battleship Defiance. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. Sub-Admiral Veth's mechanical voice crackled, with electronic amusement. A single primitive ship challenging 50 bio-vessels. Their desperation has driven them to madness. Korath studied the tactical display more carefully. Something felt wrong about this encounter. The human ship was approaching at attack speed, but its movement patterns made no logical sense. Instead of maintaining an efficient intercept course, it was zigzagging through space like a damaged vessel. Its weapon systems were powering up and down randomly, as if the crew couldn't decide what to use. Curious, Korath mused. Their behavior suggests either complete incompetence or some form of deception. The human ship opened fire without warning. Kinetic projectiles streaked toward the Dravani formation at incredible velocity. Several bioships took hits, their organic hulls punctured by depleted uranium shells. Korath felt the familiar satisfaction. As his vessels began adapting, their living armor hardening against the ballistic impact. Then something unexpected happened. Just as the bioships completed their adaptation to kinetic weapons, the human ships switched to plasma cannons. Beams of superheated gas lanced through space, striking targets that were now hardened against bullets but still vulnerable to energy weapons. Korath's flagship rocked under plasma bombardment. His bioship immediately began developing heat resistance, channeling the thermal energy into its organic systems. Within minutes, the adaptation would be complete, and the plasma weapons would become useless. But the human ship switched weapons again. This time it fired chemical warheads that released clouds of corrosive acid on impact. The bioships, now adapted to both kinetic and energy attacks, found their hulls dissolving under the acidic assault. Emergency adaptation began immediately, neutralizing the acid and developing chemical resistance. As soon as the bioships began countering the acid attack, the human vessel launched electromagnetic pulse weapons. The EMP bursts disabled several Dravani ships temporarily, causing their biomechanical systems to spasm and lose coordination. Again, adaptation began immediately. Korath watched in growing confusion as his supposedly invincible fleet struggled against a single human ship. Every time his bio-vessels adapted to one threat, the humans switched to something completely different. The attacking ship seemed to carry an impossible variety of weapon systems, from conventional explosives to exotic energy beams he couldn't identify. How many different weapon types can one ship carry? Veth wondered aloud. The answer came in the form of mining charges converted to military use, gravity bombs that created localized space distortions, and what appeared to be weaponized industrial equipment. The human ship was fighting with construction, tools, research devices, and jury-rigged systems that defied military logic. Worse, the human tactics made no sense either. Colonel Torres would charge directly at the Dravani formation, then veer away at the last second. He broadcast false retreat signals while actually advancing, sent misleading tactical communications while executing completely different maneuvers. The bioships, evolved for logical strategic thinking, couldn't predict what the humans would do next. Admiral, our tactical computers cannot establish firing solutions, reported Weapons Coordinator Neth. The human vessel's movement patterns violate all known principles of space combat. Korath tried to process what he was witnessing. His fleet outnumbered the human ship 50-1. His bio-vessels had superior technology, adaptive defenses, and the combat experience of 1,000 conquered worlds. Yet they were losing this battle. The human ship had found a weakness in the Dravani adaptation system that no one had ever discovered before. By constantly changing weapons and tactics, they prevented the bioships from completing any adaptation cycle. Each defensive modification was rendered useless before it could provide protection. But the chaos went deeper than just random weapons. The human crew seemed to thrive on unpredictability. They used communication jammers while broadcasting on open channels, fired missiles in seemingly random directions that somehow hit their targets, and executed attack patterns that looked like mistakes but achieved devastating results. Several bioships began attacking each other as their adaptive systems received conflicting data about threats. The organic computers that normally provided perfect coordination became confused when every sensor reading contradicted the previous one. What should have been humanity's weakness, their chaotic, illogical approach to warfare, had somehow become their greatest strength. The battle raged for hours with neither side able to achieve decisive victory. The Dravani ships could not adapt to threats that changed faster than adaptation could occur. The human ship could not survive sustained attack from 50 opponents, but somehow avoided destruction through maneuvers that made no tactical sense. Torres used every trick in the human military handbook and several that weren't in any handbook at all. He rammed Dravani ships and veered away before impact, creating the kinetic effect of collision without the mutual destruction. He fired weapons backwards while retreating, using the Defiance's chaotic modification as an advantage rather than a liability. Most bizarrely of all, Torres opened communication channels during combat to discuss philosophy with Admiral Korath. While exchanging fire with bioships, he talked about the nature of adaptation, the value of diversity, and humanity's approach to problem-solving. The psychological effect on the Dravani crew was devastating. Your species seeks perfection through adaptation, Torres said during a particularly intense exchange. But adaptation requires consistency. What happens when you face something that refuses to be consistent? Korath had no answer. His entire civilization was built on the principle that any threat could be overcome through proper adaptation. They had conquered galaxies by studying their enemies, understanding their weaknesses, and evolving countermeasures. But humans seemed to have no consistent weaknesses to exploit. The impossible battle ended not with victory or defeat, but with mutual withdrawal. Both fleets hung in space, damaged and confused. The Dravani had failed to destroy a single human ship despite overwhelming numerical superiority. The humans had survived an encounter with the most advanced military force in known space. As the two fleets held their positions, Korath realized that everything his species believed about warfare had just been challenged by creatures who turned chaos itself into a weapon. For the first time in Dravani history, adaptation had met its match in opponents who refused to provide anything consistent to adapt to. The age of easy conquest was over. Ahead lay a new kind of warfare, where unpredictability ruled and chaos reigned supreme. Neither side understood yet that this single battle had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The silence between the two fleets stretched across space like a held breath. Neither the Dravani bioships nor the battered human vessel moved from their positions. Both sides seemed stunned by what had just occurred. Admiral Korath stared at his tactical displays, trying to process the impossible reality that his invincible fleet had been fought to a standstill by a single chaotic opponent. Colonel Torres opened a communication channel, his voice carrying across the void with surprising calmness. Admiral Korath, I believe we should talk. The suggestion was absurd. Victorious conquerors did not negotiate with defeated primitives. Yet Korath found himself unable to claim victory when his 50 ships had failed to destroy one human vessel. More disturbing still, he was genuinely curious about what Torres might say. In 1,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever requested discussion after battle. Speak, human, Korath replied. I've been studying your tactics during our engagement, Torres said. Your bioships are remarkable. They can adapt to any consistent threat within minutes. That's an incredible evolutionary advantage. But I think you've forgotten something important. Korath's enhanced consciousness processed thousands of variables simultaneously. His bioship was already analyzing the human vessel, looking for weaknesses to exploit in the next engagement. But Torres continued speaking, and something in his tone suggested this conversation might be more significant than a mere delay tactic. Evolution isn't just about adaptation, Torres explained. It's about diversity. On Earth, we have millions of species that survived not by becoming perfect, but by becoming different from each other. Chaos isn't a weakness, it's a survival strategy. The concept was alien to Dravani thinking. Their entire civilization had achieved dominance through perfection and uniformity. Their bioships represented the pinnacle of adaptive technology, able to counter any threat through systematic evolution. The idea that chaos could be superior to order violated everything they understood about survival. You speak of chaos as strength, Korath said, yet your species has barely achieved interstellar travel. How can disorder triumph over perfection? Torres laughed, a sound that somehow carried warmth even across the cold vacuum of space. Because perfection assumes you know what challenges you'll face. But the universe is unpredictable. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most efficient one, it's the most flexible one. Sub-Admiral Veth transmitted private concerns to Korath through their bioship's neural network. The humans' words were having an unexpected effect on the crew. Several bioship systems were beginning to question their own adaptive routines, creating hesitation in what should have been automatic responses. But Torres wasn't finished. I want to show you something, he said. Data streams began flowing from the Defiance to the Dravani flagship. These are records from human conflicts over the past century. Look at how we fight each other. The information was staggering. Humans had fought wars using every conceivable weapon and tactic: chemical warfare, biological agents, nuclear devices, kinetic bombardment, electronic warfare, psychological operations. More importantly, they often used multiple approaches simultaneously, even when those approaches contradicted each other. Your species learns from conflict, Korath observed. We learn from everything, Torres corrected. Combat, cooperation, failure, success. We don't just adapt to threats when we adapt to possibilities. Sometimes we prepare for problems that don't exist yet, just in case they might exist someday. Korath studied the human military records more carefully. Their weapons development showed no clear progression from primitive to advanced. Instead, humans had developed multiple parallel technologies, keeping older systems in service alongside newer ones. Their military doctrine embraced redundancy and contradiction as features rather than flaws. This is inefficient, Korath said. Why maintain dozens of different approaches when one optimal solution would suffice? Because we don't know what optimal means until we face the actual problem, Torres replied. Your bioships are perfect for adapting to known threats, but what happens when you encounter something completely unprecedented? Something so chaotic that there's nothing consistent to adapt to? The question hung in the void between them. Korath's flagship pulsed with organic rhythms as its living computers processed this new paradigm. The bioship had been designed to evolve and improve, but Torres was suggesting that improvement itself might be a limitation. You propose cooperation, Korath said, though the word felt strange in his enhanced vocal systems. Your species would share this chaos philosophy with us. I'm proposing something more radical than cooperation, Torres said. I'm proposing that maybe there's no single right way to approach the universe. Your people have mastered adaptation through conquest. Mine have survived through diversity and unpredictability. What if both approaches have value? The concept was revolutionary. Dravani civilization was built on the assumption that their way was superior, that conquest and assimilation were the natural order of advanced species. The idea that primitive humans might have insights worth learning challenged the foundation of their entire worldview. Across the Dravani fleet, bioships were experiencing something unprecedented: doubt. Their adaptive systems were trying to process the possibility that adaptation itself might not be the ultimate survival strategy. Some ships began experimenting with random modifications, introducing controlled chaos into their normally perfect systems. Your words create disorder in our fleet, Korath said. Our bioships are becoming uncertain. Uncertainty isn't weakness, Torres replied. It's the beginning of growth. Your ships have been perfect at adapting to known patterns, but perfection in one area often means blindness in others. Korath felt something he had never experienced before, curiosity about an inferior species. For 1,000 years, the Dravani had encountered countless civilizations, studied their technologies, and absorbed their useful characteristics. But they had never considered that their own approach might be incomplete. What do you propose? Korath asked. A test, Torres said. Not a battle, but an experiment. Send one of your bioships to work alongside human vessels for a standard cycle. Let your adaptive systems try to understand chaos instead of conquering it. In return, we'll let your scientists study our approach to unpredictable warfare. The proposal was insane by Dravani standards. Their bioships were military assets, not research tools. Cooperation with primitives violated every protocol in their conquest doctrine. Yet something about the humans' offer intrigued Korath's enhanced consciousness. And if this experiment proves your chaos superior to our order, then maybe we both learn something new, Torres said. The universe is big enough for multiple approaches to survival. Maybe conquest isn't the only way to spread across the stars. Veth transmitted urgent warnings through the bioship's neural network. Cooperation with prey species had never been attempted. The very concept threatened to undermine the hierarchical structure that held Dravani civilization together. If humans were treated as equals rather than subjects, other conquered species might begin demanding similar consideration. But Korath was remembering something from the ancient archives, data from before the age of conquest began. The early Dravani had been explorers and scientists, driven by curiosity about the universe around them. Somewhere in their evolution toward perfect adaptation, they had lost that sense of wonder about the unknown. One bioship, Korath said finally. Sub-Admiral Keth will command the experimental vessel, but this cooperation is temporary. If your chaos proves inferior, we will resume our conquest. Understood, Torres replied. And if our chaos proves superior? Korath paused, his enhanced mind processing possibilities he had never considered. Then perhaps the age of conquest ends, and the age of exploration begins again. The agreement between the two fleets was unlike anything in galactic history. A Dravani bioship detached from the formation and approached the human vessel. Instead of preparing for battle, both crews prepared for something unprecedented: genuine cooperation between species with completely different approaches to survival. Torres transmitted detailed files about human military philosophy to the approaching bioship. The data included everything from ancient Earth warfare to cutting-edge chaos theory applications. More importantly, it included records of human failures and mistakes, showing how setbacks had led to innovations that pure success never could have achieved. Sub-Admiral Keth studied the human data with growing fascination. Her bioship began attempting to incorporate random elements into its normally predictable systems. The results were initially catastrophic. Weapons fired at the wrong targets, defensive systems activated randomly, navigation computers chose inefficient routes. But gradually, something interesting emerged from the chaos. The bioship began developing capabilities it had never possessed before. Random weapon combinations created unexpected effects. Defensive systems that activated unpredictably confused targeting computers. Most significantly, the ship's adaptive systems became more flexible, able to handle multiple simultaneous threats instead of focusing on single challenges. Remarkable, Keth reported to Korath. Chaos does not prevent adaptation, it accelerates it. When systems must handle unpredictable inputs, they develop broader capabilities. Meanwhile, human engineers studied the Dravani bioship with equal fascination. The organic technology offered solutions to problems humanity had struggled with for decades. But more importantly, the cooperation itself was teaching both species new approaches to old challenges. The experimental partnership lasted 3 months. During that time, the hybrid human Dravani vessel encountered pirates, natural disasters, and even remnants of other conquered civilizations. In every case, the combination of human chaos and Dravani adaptation proved more effective than either approach alone. Word of the cooperation spread throughout both fleets. Human captains began requesting bioship partnerships. Dravani crews started experimenting with controlled randomness in their tactical planning. The rigid hierarchy that had enabled galactic conquest began evolving into something more flexible and creative. Admiral Korath found himself facing a choice that no Dravani commander had ever confronted. He could order the resumption of conquest, using force to maintain the old order. Or, he could embrace this new paradigm where cooperation replaced domination as the primary tool of expansion. The decision came when reports arrived of a new threat emerging from the galactic core. Ancient machines, dormant for millions of years, were awakening and consuming everything in their path. These constructs adapted even faster than Dravani bioships, but they also followed perfectly logical patterns. They are like us, but more so, Korath told Torres during their final communication. Perfect adaptation, complete logic, absolute order. They will destroy both our species unless we find a way to stop them. Torres studied the data about the ancient machines with growing concern. Perfect enemies require imperfect solutions. Your bioships alone won't be enough. Our chaos alone won't be enough, but together we might find possibilities that neither species could discover alone, Korath finished. The age of conquest was ending, but the age of cooperation was just beginning. As both fleets prepared to face the ancient threat, they carried with them a new understanding that diversity and chaos, when combined with adaptation and order, created possibilities that neither could achieve alone. The universe had become a more dangerous place, but also a more hopeful one. For the first time in galactic history, two completely different species were choosing to face the unknown together, armed with the combined strength of order and chaos, adaptation and unpredictability. The real test was yet to come.